Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1663. The topic is nutrition and the title is meal suggestions. So this is a common question I get from clients is, what should I eat at each meal? What should I have for breakfast? What should I have for lunch? What should I have for dinner? And I wanted to make a podcast to kind of help them decide on what would be the best meals. This is a good way to just kind of sum up a lot of information that is in their nutrition program. I still would like them to, read everything and listen to all the individual podcasts, but I wanted to make kind of one grouped one so that way everything's in here and people who aren't my clients can also answer this question for themselves is, what should I have for this meal? What should I have for whatever meal you want? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, pre-workout, post-workout, whatever it might be. What we want to look at when we think of the meal is, what do I need from the meal? What do we get when we eat food? We want protein and energy. We want calories, and some of those calories should be protein. We talk about in podcast 1232. It's a nutrition podcast titled Start Here. That's a step-by-step guide on how to create your own nutrition program. We actually have that printed out, kind of a whole document based around it on our website. You can go to our website, www.brutalirongym.com, go to free nutrition education. The first link under there is titled Create Your Own Nutrition Program. It's a document that has the podcast 1232, a link to it. You can listen to the podcast. And then it has calculations and descriptions on how to set up your own nutrition program. 100% totally free. I just want people to be able to do that if they need to do that so everybody can be healthy and happy. But that's what we want to look for, is every meal we have calories and protein. We then want to consider, okay, what do I need from this meal, from my calories and my protein? Am I very active? Am I not very active? Those are kind of the two main conditions that we would want to pay attention to. I guess that's one condition is activity. It's just two options is I'm very active, I'm not very active. So if I'm pretty active, if I'm very busy, very active, I want fast digesting protein. I'm going to talk through that in a second here to let you know what that would be. If I'm not very busy, not very active, I want slow digesting protein. Same thing with energy, same thing with our calories. If I'm very busy, very active, I want fast energy, and that's mostly carbohydrates. If I'm not very busy, not very active, I want slow energy, and that's mostly fats. We can have carbs and fats in blended ratios, absolutely 100%. And that allows for a lot of freedom of food choice to match your preferences. But if I want a meal that's as fast as possible to be digested, I don't want fats in there. If I want a meal as slow as possible, I want to maximize my caloric allowance towards fats and protein, so I would want minimal carbohydrates. So you would just kind of budge that ratio whichever direction you need it to be. So pre-workout, no fats whatsoever. Right before bed, if you want a slow release of protein throughout the night, carbohydrates aren't going to be necessarily the best choice. It would be better to do proteins and fats. It's all a little bit of live and learn, play with it a little bit and see how you feel. But there are going to be some good suggestions on where to start. So when we look at what do I need for my meal? If I'm very busy, very active, I want fast digesting proteins. Those are mostly going to be liquids and non-solids. So it would be a protein powder. Non-solids, what that means is like a Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, things that aren't like a big hunk of meat, basically. It's going to be something that can digest a little bit faster because it's already in like a broken down state. If I want slow digesting protein, I want solid foods, and that's like meat, cheese, big hunks of things that are in solid form. And that will be a slower digesting protein. When I think of energy, if I want super duper fast energy, I want sugars. So that's right before a workout. I haven't eaten for a while. I just need to throw something in my face so I can have decent energy. I would focus on sugars. If I want like a medium fast carbohydrate, I would look for a non-sugar but a refined carbohydrate. And that might be white rice, white bread, just kind of easier to digest carbohydrates, maybe a cereal. It's not necessarily sugar, but it's not the most complex type of carbohydrate. So if I wanted a slow digesting carbohydrate, I would look for a non-refined item, which might be brown rice, quinoa, sweet potato. There are different rates of digestion even within carbohydrates. And then when I look at fats, if I want, it's kind of like you're not really going to think of like a fast fat or a slow fat. What typically you're going to decide between is, do I want a low density fat? Meaning I want to have some fats in my meal, but I don't want to feel too full and I don't want too much volume to my meal. Or do I want a high density fat, which is I want very, very, very slow digestion, such as the meal right before we go to bed. We want slow release of energy and protein throughout the night. Or if I'm about to have a really long 7 to 8 hour break between meals, because I have super busy, some kind of event going on, then I would focus mostly on fats to kind of bridge that gap. And those are going to be solid fats like meats and cheeses. The low density, the I don't want to feel too full fats, are going to be mostly liquids. So non-solids, you're looking at oils, nut butters, avocado, things that are kind of mushy and soft to eat, or liquids like for oils as example. But that's essentially what you're going to be playing with is, do I want a fast digesting or slow digesting protein? Do I want a fast digesting or slow digesting energy source? And then it's coming up with combinations using foods that you like and then practicing it and playing with it and seeing how you feel after you eat. You might have a meal that sounds perfect on paper, but when you eat it, you're like, ugh, I kind of feel bloated and I don't have great energy from that. Let me switch those foods out. So for example, I did an experiment where I played around with different carbohydrate sources, but I kept my calories the same and my protein the same, protein sources the same. And I found for me that when I ate oats and oatmeal, I didn't get a lot of energy. I kind of felt bloated, kind of felt blah. So even though I had the same calories, I just didn't feel optimal for me digestion-wise. When I switched to sweet potato, I didn't have the bloat, but I wasn't hungry enough for my next meals. It was almost too filling, and it felt like I was force-feeding myself all day. When I switched to white rice, jasmine rice, it was all of a sudden, that was a perfect one. I had good energy, didn't feel bloated, and I was hungry enough for my next meal. So I found when I was trying to gain size, that jasmine rice for me worked the best. When I was trying to lose weight, sweet potato would be better because I was fuller for longer and I wasn't really that hungry for my next meal. So a lot of this is going to have to come down to experiment. You're not going to know all of the answers before you start. Given the guidelines we've talked about, and I'm going to continue to give more examples here in a second, but given this information in today's podcast, you can have a better idea of where to start, for sure. But you're still not going to know everything perfectly before you start. You do have to just start with something, eat the meals, see how you feel, and then make some adjustments along the way. So if we look at some example meals, how would I put together, what do I need from this meal? Do I need a fast or slow digesting protein? Do I need a fast or slow digesting energy source? If you look at a pre-workout, you need it fast. You need the protein in your system as fast as possible. You need the energy in your system as fast as possible. So you're mostly going to look at powders. So for protein, you're going to do a protein powder. And for energy, you're going to do carbohydrates and you're going to look for sugar. So I use a Gatorade powder. A Gatorade powder is relatively cheap considering compared to buying full bottles of Gatorade. But you can do Gatorade powder and protein powder, and that's great pre-workout energy. It's going to give you everything you need. It's going to give you the protein. It's going to give you the energy. Very quick digesting. It's not overfilling. You're not going to have stuff sitting in your gut while you're trying to work out. Super easy, good choice. If we look at a post-workout meal, you want stuff that's fast digesting, but it doesn't have to be liquids. You could do, a protein powder and a sugar-based energy source again. Or if you're like, okay, I'm going to have my post-workout meal, but I'm not going to have another meal for, say, 2, 3, 4 hours. I don't want to do liquids. I don't want to do the Gatorade powder and the protein powder because my body's going to consume that super fast, and then I'll be left with nothing until my next meal. So I want something that's fast-ish. So it's fast-ish, but it's going to last 2 or 3 hours. That would be a lean protein source, in refined carbohydrates. So that could be chicken breast, that could be white fish, just some type of protein, like solid protein, that doesn't have fats in it, as low as fats as possible, because you want this nutrients, the protein and stuff, to get into the system to help repair after the workout as fast as possible. So you want to reduce fats. So you want a lean protein source, and you want refined carbs, because they're the kind of medium speed of carbohydrates. That would be bagels. It could be a cereal. It could be a white potato. It could be white rice. You just want stuff that digests relatively easy, relatively quickly, but allows you to feel full for the time gap that you have until your next meal. So, for example, if I have somebody who's doing bodybuilding and they're trying to get as big as possible, we might do a liquid post-workout meal, because we're going to try to eat again within an hour and then try to have another boost of calories post-workout. If I have somebody who's trying to lose body fat and we're not concerned about gaining maximal muscle tissue, and we have to kind of blend our calorie consumption out throughout the whole day, then we might have a full solid food meal post-workout, like I talked about with like a lean protein. Maybe they'll have chicken and rice after the workout because they're not going to eat again for 2 or 3 hours. So you think to yourself, is what do I need from this meal? Do I need fast-digesting energies, fast-digesting protein, and I'm going to be eating in an hour, so I need it to really be fast. Or do I need fast-digesting protein? Do I need fast-digesting energy? But it's going to be a couple hours till I eat my next meal. So I want a fast-ish source, but not something that's too fast. So again, I would understand if somebody's listening to this going, oh my God, that seems too complicated. I understand. It's going to come down to just practice and kind of playing with things. And as you go through that, you'll start to find things that work for you. And then you're like, okay, I know that's good. Don't have to worry about that anymore. It will solve itself as you continue to work through. So when I work with my clients, I tell them to pretty much eat, common foods that they would eat. I go through their tracking apps. If they use MyFitnessPal or My Macros or whatever it might be, I'll log in, I'll look at what they ate, and I'll say, hey, for example, before the workout, you ate about an hour before the workout, but we had a lot of fats in that meal. That's not going to give you really good energy. So why don't you swap this food for this food? So when it's my clients, I'll give them actual feedback per meal, give them suggestions for changes they can make. But at the same time, they're just going to have to experiment with it, see how they feel. Because, like for carbs, you can get carbs like energy from, breads, bagels, cereals, oats, pasta, potato, rice, vegetables if you wanted to, like beans. You could do protein bars. There's about 4 billion sources of carbohydrates. So I want them to use foods that they enjoy, foods that they like, foods that they're familiar with, foods that are convenient to be made, cooked, whatever they normally do. I don't want to stray too far from that. I just want to refine what they do. And that's going to be the best way to have the diet be successful, whether it's a diet for building muscle, gaining weight, diet for strength, diet for fat loss, is to use foods they're familiar with, foods they like, and then we just modify small tweaks here and there. That's the best approach for long-term success because it's the best approach to develop consistency. If we think about another example of meals, would be like an active daytime meal. It would be similar to the post-workout kind of meal. You want something that's fast digesting, so lean protein, refined carbohydrates. So again, lean protein source, you could do eggs if you want to do eggs. You could do fish. You could do lean meats. There's chicken breast. You could do low fat percentage turkey, ground turkey if you want that. There's really like almost limitless stuff. Tofu if you're vegan, vegetarian. Like there's a lot of options that we have, and that can be what creates the sense of overwhelmingness. So when I send my nutrition program to my clients, I give them a sample list of healthy foods. So that way they at least have some ideas of where to start. They would pick from the list and put stuff together. That's the idea. If we have an inactive daytime meal, for example, you want a slow digesting protein, a slow digesting energy source, which could be a mixture of carbs and fats or leaning more towards fats. If I have an evening meal, slow digesting evening meal, for example, could be a steak and vegetables. The steak gives you the protein, it gives you a lot of fats, and then the vegetables might provide just some volume to the meal. So that way you get to eat more in that meal volume-wise, and it feels more full. and it feels like a complete meal. So that's the idea, is once you have an idea of what you need from the meal, am I very active, not very active? Do I need fast digesting or slow digesting? Once you have that, you figure out foods that fit that category, and then you figure out your portions. So how do you figure out your portions? Is you would say, okay, how many calories do I need per day? And what I encourage clients to do is to use what we call time blocks. Is if there's 24 hours in a day, and I'm asleep at least 6 hours of the day, that means I'm awake for roughly 18. If I divide those 18 hours into 3 time blocks, so there's the first 6 hours of being awake, the second 6 hours of being awake, and then the final roughly 6 hours of being awake. What I like to do with that, the reason why I like that is, rather than trying to manage your day in its entirety, which can be overwhelming, you want to manage those time blocks. So I take my total calories, I would divide them by 3. That gives me the number of calories I need in the first 6 hours, number of calories I need in the second 6 hours, numbers of calories I need in the third 6 hours. And then I do the same thing with my protein. How much protein do I need per day? And then divide it by 3. So an example, one of my clients just stole this from their programming. Their target calories are 3,000 to 3,300 calories. And this is on training day. So training day, they do 3,000 calories to 3,300 calories. And their protein is at least 160 grams. We're trying to push them up to 180 to 200, but they're coming from a history of not really eating a lot of protein, so we're kind of building that up. We're getting them used to a lower amount, get that consistent, and then we'll push it up. So if we look at the time blocks, if their calorie target is 3,000 to 3,300, and you divide that by 3, that means per 6 hours, they need about 1,000 to 1,100 calories. And then if we take the protein, we want at least around 160 grams. So that would mean that per 6 hours, we're looking for roughly about 55 grams of protein. So this is how I would do it if I were them. Is I would say, not thinking of the entire day as it's a whole big day, a bunch of meals, and it's overwhelming. I would say, okay, the first 6 hours of me being awake, I just need to make sure I eat at least 1,000 calories and 55 grams of protein. Done. Much more simple. It feels more achievable. It doesn't feel as overwhelming. So one of the things I gave to them was to set time blocks. So they wake up at 6 a.m. That means by noon, the first 6 hours, they should already have 1,000 calories and 55 grams of protein. Then by around 6 p.m., they should have 1,000 calories and 55 grams of protein. And then in the final part of being awake, they would have the final 1,000 calories and 55 grams of protein. So that's what we look at, is we just say, hey, by noon I should have this. Then by 6 p.m. I should have this. Then by the time I go to bed, I should have this. It makes it so much easier. So for example, what's also nice to know is that per time block, I can have 1 meal, I can have 2 meals, I can have 3 meals, I can have whatever I need to have in order to hit my targets. So they have a meal at 7 a.m. It's 1 bagel, 3 ounces of lunch meat, and 1 slice of cheese. That's roughly about 600 calories, 27 grams of protein. Then around 9, maybe 10, they have meetings, so they're kind of like that meal moves around a little bit. They have 3 ounces of nuts, and they like that because they kind of pick and eat at them through over a course of like an hour or so. And it's 450 calories, 18 grams of protein. So in the first time block, they get 2 meals. They reach 1,050 calories and 45 grams of protein. So that's their goal, is by noon to have 1,000 calories and 55 grams of protein. So if you notice, they fell a little bit short there, but we're going to make it up later on throughout the day. But we know that we're at least tracking near what we need already by this part of the day. The second time block we said was from noon to 6 p.m. So at noon, they have lunch. They have 8 ounces of a lean meat with 2 cups of rice, and then they use sauce for whatever they need for taste. And that's going to be 650 calories, 58 grams of protein. Then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they have a little bit of a meal, like a little snack thing, because they're going to go work out after work. They're going to work out around 5-ish. So at 3 o'clock, they have something that's not super fast digesting, but not super slow. It's kind of in that middle ground because we want it to be digested and be usable in roughly about 2 hours. So they have 2 tablespoons of peanut butter and a banana. That's 300 calories, 9 grams of protein. Then on their way to the workout, on the way driving from work to the gym, they're going to then lead into their third time block. So how we have this set up for them is we said the first time block, they have 2 meals. The bagel, lunch meat, cheese, and then the meal of nuts. And we know that by the end of that first time block, 1,050 calories, 45 grams of protein. Then the second time block, they have the 8 ounces of lean meat, 2 cups of rice as lunch, and then they have the 2 tablespoons of peanut butter and a banana for their afternoon. So that gives them 950 calories in the afternoon with 67 grams of protein. So that makes up for that little bit of low protein in the first part of the day. And although it's only 950 calories, it's pretty close again to that 1,000 calorie mark. Then we know on their way to the workout, they're going to drink 20 ounces of Gatorade. That's 140 calories, no protein. Then after the workout is also the last meal of their day. So we blend together a little bit of carbohydrates to replenish energy stores, and just because they like them, and we know the energy stores like glycogen is super depleted at this point. So it's okay to have some carbs. It's not going to crush them or make them gain body fat. But we also want some fats at that meal. So that way it helps to slow the digestion of the protein as they go throughout the night. So at 7:30, they have 8 ounces of fatty meat, which is like a steak, like sirloin steak, top round, stuff like that. 200 grams of cooked pasta, and then again, sauce to taste. That's 820 calories, 50 grams of protein. So by the end of the third time block, they're at 960 calories and 50 grams of protein. This allows them to think of per section of the day, per 6 hours. How many calories do I need? How many grams of protein do I need? Do I do that in 1 meal? Do I do that in 2 meals? What does my schedule look like? Can I get it in 1 meal? Or if it feels like too much food, should I split it over 2 meals? If I only have time for 1 meal, can I get them in with maybe doing fats and protein? Because there's fats aren't as volumed to get your calories. There's not as much volume of food that you need when you use fat sources. And if they're only going to have 1 meal during that whole time block, you want it to be a slower digesting meal. So it can be overwhelming. I 100% understand that. But one of the things that's amazing and wonderful about this is as you practice it, and I'm talking about within like 4 weeks, you'll find that you have certain choices that you prefer, you like, they fit really well, and now you're very confident that you know exactly what to eat throughout the day. But by having the time blocks, by having the understanding of how many calories and grams of protein you need within each time block, and the understanding of how to decide what you need per meal, you can make modifications when life changes. If something comes up schedule-wise, you have an appointment, you can't have your normal meal, maybe your car broke down, somebody needs help, the job changed that day, maybe you end up having the day off versus a day you expected to go to work, maybe you have a non-training day randomly because you thought you were going to train but your schedule didn't allow it. This allows you to make modifications and changes without missing the most important components, which is calories and protein in the totality of the day. It can be very challenging to figure this out. But with practice, you'll do a really good job, I promise. So again, when you're deciding what to have at a meal, am I very active? Am I not very active? If I'm very active, I want a fast digesting protein. I want a fast digesting energy. If I'm not very active, I want a slow digesting protein, a slow digesting energy. And that's going to be that challenge to just finding the balance and say, okay, if I know I want a fast digesting protein, what are the different fast digesting protein sources? What do I like? And then I just figure out the amounts that I need. So, for example, in that client document, we know the amounts per meal. The first meal is a bagel, 3 ounces of lunch meat, and a slice of cheese. Let's say that we want to increase protein in that meal. Well, I could have more lunch meat, or I could have more cheese because they both have protein. I'm not going to have more bagel because there's not a significant amount of protein in bagels. But let's say that I need protein, but I don't want calories. I don't want a ton of extra calories. then you do fat-free cheese. Or you do a low-fat lunch meat. Let's say that you needed protein and calories. Well, then you do a full-fat cheese and a fattier lunch meat. So you just modify the amount of what you need. Maybe you need more energy. You're like, I got enough protein, but dadgum, I have no energy. I think I need more energy nutrients. Well, you can have the bagel, the lunch meat, and slice of cheese and add a banana. Or you can have 2 bagels. So you decide, what do I need in this meal? Do I need more protein? Do I need less protein? Do I need more energy? Do I need less energy? And then you modify which food item gives you which of those things. That's why using a tracking app is very helpful, because it'll tell you the breakdown of the food. You'll see if it's high in protein or if it's not high in protein, if it's high in carbs, if it's not high in carbs, if it's high in fats, if it's not high in fats. You get a chance to see what's in the food that you commonly eat, and then you learn better about which foods to modify to hit which macro target, whether it's calories target or a protein target. Like, for example, their lunch. It's 8 ounces of lean meat, 2 cups of rice, and then sauce to taste. It's 650 calories, 58 grams of protein. You might say to yourself, well, that sounds good, but holy crap, I don't need 58 grams of protein. That's way too much. Well, instead of 8 ounces of meat, you do 4 ounces of meat. Maybe that gives you enough protein. And you're like, well, I still needed the calories. Well, then you have more rice. Or you add another energy nutrient to the meal. Maybe you have more of a sauce that actually has some sugars in it. That'll help add some calories but not add the protein. Like their afternoon, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter and 1 banana. You might think to yourself, well, I'd like to have more protein. It's only 300 calories, only 9 grams of protein. Well, add a protein shake in there. Add a protein drink. There's ways to modify the meals to match what you need from them. The challenge is you just have to know what you need. And that's where that free Create Your Own Nutrition Program document will come into play. And then once you know your total calories and protein, you divide them by 3, so that way you know per 6 hours what you should be eating, like what your targets are. Then you pick the foods you like, you figure out the amounts you need per food, and then that's how you get there. It does take some effort, absolutely, 100% understand that. But the benefit of putting in the effort is that you learn how to eat the right amount of foods, the right types of foods, but with foods that you actually like. And you know how to make modifications and changes when life changes. That develops consistency. Getting to have foods you like and being able to make changes when life changes. That develops consistency, and that allows you to be successful. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it gave you some just good general thought about how to put together meals. I understand that it'll take practice for all my clients. That's why we have our ability. You can live online journal. You can write any question you want 24/7. I will get to it every single week. So yay for my clients. If you're not one of my clients, it's just going to take practice and then experimenting and seeing how you feel, and then say, okay, I liked this meal, but I'm kind of tired of eggs. What else can give me protein that I can eat at breakfast? And you just start to kind of guess at that. You start to look for, Google search, foods that are high in fat, foods that are high in carbohydrates, foods that are high in protein. You pick whichever food from whichever category you need, you try it, play with the amount of it to hit your distribution targets, and then you're good to go. So it's just living and learning, a little bit of practice. Okay, I hope this was helpful in some way. So if you have any follow-up questions, if you need anything, shoot me an email. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions and make a podcast for you so that we all can benefit from the question as well. If you like our podcast, please share it. The more people you share it with, the more people can help. That's the whole point of doing the podcast, is just to help as many people as possible. So thank you if you share the podcast, because it helps towards that goal. Thank you to those who donate to support the podcast. There is a high hosting cost on all the different podcast platforms, so I really appreciate the donations that we do get to help cover some of that cost. It lessens that burden for me, so thank you very, very much. If you want to donate, you can do so on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. Even just $5 a month, $10 a month, anything you can give adds up. It is significant. It does help, and I greatly appreciate it. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can always find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us under the name Brutal Iron Gym on Instagram and YouTube. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.